So, I'm Ethan Miller, just your average graphic designer, the kind who spends way too much time staring at screens until his eyes feel like sandpaper. Recently, I packed up my life in the city and moved back to my childhood home, out here in the quiet suburbs. My parents, bless their hearts, decided to downsize, so I ended up with this big old house all to myself. Honestly, it's exactly what I needed. Some peace and quiet to drown out the noise of my own head and, the constant pings of client emails. I've always been a logic guy, pure and simple. Everything has an explanation. Supernatural stuff, ghosts, all that jazz? Nah, total hogwash. Always has been. I swear, sometimes I think folks just make that stuff up when they can't figure out the actual science behind something. I mean, when I was a kid, maybe 8 or 10, I used to see these dark shapes. Just quick flashes, at the very edge of my vision. A flicker in my bedroom, a blur down the hallway, sometimes even outside my window when the light was fading. Never anything clear, just a moving absence of light. It freaked me out a bit back then, sure. My parents took me to an eye doctor, and what do you know? Mild astigmatism and eye strain. The doctor explained it all, floaters, optical illusions, phosphenes, said it was common, especially when you're tired or looking at high contrast stuff. I latched onto that explanation like it was a life raft. It made sense. It was real. It was science. I even did my own deep dive, because I'm that kind of nerd. Read up on shadow people, sleep paralysis hallucinations, anything to stack the deck for my rational brain. Convinced myself it was all just my eyes playing tricks, my brain filling in the blanks, just light and shadows messing with my perception. I'd even joke about it sometimes, call it my personal peripheral ghost. Always with a scoff, always with that tone of scientific dismissal, just a quirk of my biology, nothing more. So yeah, moving back here, I figured it would be fine. It's home, after all. Familiar, safe, nothing to worry about. Just me, my laptop, and maybe a few too many cups of coffee. What could possibly go wrong, right? I started off by just, unpacking, trying to make this old place feel like mine again, even though every creak of the floorboards felt like the house itself was sighing. My workspace is in the back, overlooking the garden. Pretty decent view, I guess. The wind sometimes whistles through the gaps in the old window frames, a mournful sound. Just an old house being an old house, nothing to get worked up about. Then, one night, I was deep into a project. Hours flew by, and the only light in the room was the glow from my monitor. My eyes were burning, probably from staring at pixels for too long. And then it happened. Right there, at the very edge of my right eye, a smear of absolute black. It zipped across the wall, a sudden, sharp movement, and then it was gone. Just like that. "The hell, Ethan? Again?" I mumbled to myself, rubbing my eyes hard. My head felt heavy. Too much caffeine, too much screen time. You're losing it, pal. I stood up, stretched my stiff back, and went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Tried to shake off the weird feeling. It was just fatigue, has to be. A few days later, dusk, that weird in-between time when the light starts to fade and everything gets a bit fuzzy. I was walking from the living room to the kitchen, humming some random tune. The house was quiet, that deep, heavy quiet that only old houses have. As I passed the small window right by the kitchen sink, a shape. Taller this time, skinnier. It glided past the glass, a definite silhouette, clear enough to send a cold shiver down my spine. It was gone in a flash, vanished behind the thick rose bushes outside. I stopped dead. My heart hammered against my ribs, a loud, frantic drum. I stared at the window, my breath catching in my throat. My hand shot out, flicking on the kitchen light, banishing the encroaching shadows. I practically bolted to the window, peering out into the darkening garden. Nothing. Just the leaves on the rose bushes rustling in the breeze, the shadows of the branches dancing. Damn it, Ethan, you're seeing things, I hissed, my own voice sounding a little too loud in the sudden silence. It's a light trick, or maybe some stray cat, or a raccoon. Yeah, a raccoon. I tried to reason with myself, to force the logic back into my brain, but my palms felt sweaty, and that cold feeling, it was still there, clinging to the back of my neck, a cold, nagging feeling that just wouldn't quit. Honestly, the house started to feel different after that. It wasn't just an old house anymore. It was waiting. Like it wasn't just walls and wood, but something that had its own slow, quiet pulse. Not empty anymore. It had this subtle hum, this presence. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on. No specific sound or smell, just a general unease that settled in my bones. It made my skin crawl sometimes. That night, I had a dream. Or maybe it was a nightmare, I don't know. The same dark, indistinct shape, gliding, twisting, and whispers. So faint, like dry leaves rustling, I couldn't make out a single word. They just swirled around the edge of my consciousness, a faint, unsettling hum. I woke up with a gasp, my body slick with cold sweat. My heart was still pounding like I'd just run a marathon. I sat up in bed, trying to catch my breath. Stress, I mumbled, pulling the blanket higher. Just stress. Too much work, too much overthinking. That's all it is. I kept telling myself that, over and over. A few days later, I decided to tackle the basement. That old storage room was a disaster zone. Dust, cobwebs, boxes packed away years ago. As I was sifting through the clutter, I found it. A worn cardboard box labeled in my mom's neat handwriting, Ethan and Alex's childhood treasures. A pang of something, nostalgia, maybe, or something heavier, hit me. Alex, my little brother. He passed away years ago, too. Too young. Inside, there were old action figures, some faded comic books, and a handful of crayon drawings. One of them, I pulled it out, and my breath hitched a little. It was Alex's scrawl, no doubt. 2 stick figures holding hands, me and him, probably. And then, beside us, a figure drawn entirely in black. Just a solid, featureless blob of darkness. Next to it, what looked like a tree, but it was drawn snapped in half, branches splayed awkwardly. I just stared at it. I shrugged, a nervous twitch in my shoulders. Kids draw weird stuff, right? I mumbled, trying to laugh it off. It's just a kid's drawing. But the image of that black shape, so stark against the faded paper, gave me the creeps. And that tree, broken. I tried to remember when Alex might have drawn this, if he'd ever mentioned a black figure, but my mind was blank. Just an empty space where that memory should be. I put the drawing back in the box, trying to push it from my mind. It was just a drawing, nothing. But a cold knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Something was off. Something was definitely off. Man, I was getting more and more tired. My eyes felt like they were stretched thin, always aching. That feeling, like something was always at the very edge of my vision, it was constant now. Like a damn fly buzzing around, never quite landing. Just there. Always there. My logical brain was still clinging on for dear life, though. Shit, my astigmatism must be getting worse, I'd mumble to myself, rubbing my temples. Or maybe I'm just fried. Probably need to chill. This is insane. I went online, searching up eye strain symptoms, stress, and yeah, optical illusions, hallucinations. Those words started popping up a lot more in my search history. It was getting harder to ignore. I kept telling myself, I gotta get my eyes checked again. Has to be some physiological thing. 'Cause otherwise, there's no way. I just had to believe that. The alternative? It was just too much. One night, I was standing in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, just doing my thing, staring at myself in the mirror. And then, at the very corner of my eye, in my reflection, there it was. A tall, skinny shadow, like a black smudge on the pristine white wall. It was standing right behind me. My heart went ballistic. I spun around, fast, plastering toothpaste everywhere. Nothing. Just the plain white wall. Empty. My heart hammered against my ribs, ready to bust right out. "Ethan, what the hell is wrong with you?" I hissed, my voice shaky. "You're scaring yourself, you idiot." I even slapped my own cheek, just a light tap, trying to snap out of it. It felt so real, though. Too real for just a trick of the light. The next night, I needed to go down to the basement. Had to dig out some old books. I was halfway down the wooden steps, and the basement light started flickering like crazy. Zap, zap. Then a blast of cold air hit the back of my neck, colder than any AC. That black shape, it didn't just zip past this time. It stood there, frozen, in the corner of the stairs, tall, towering, like a column of black smoke. Just for a split second. Then, click. The light snapped back on, steady and bright, and it was gone. Just gone. No way that's my eyes anymore. My voice was a whisper, barely audible over my ragged breathing. My hands shot out, gripping the rickety banister, knuckles white. My legs was shaking so bad I thought I'd collapse right there. That thing, it was looking at me. I swear it was. It felt like it. The air where it had been felt heavy, cold, like the space itself was still trying to catch its breath after whatever had just been there. I practically scrambled back up the stairs, not even bothering with the books. I started getting really messed up in my head. I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone, not even my closest friends. They'd think I was losing it, tell me to see a shrink or something. So I kept it all bottled up, trying to act normal, trying to focus on my design work. But my concentration was shot. Every shadow, every flicker, every creak in the old house, I was jumping out of my skin. My search history turned into a deep dive into local legends, old house histories, anything about this damn neighborhood. I was hoping for some mundane explanation, anything to calm my nerves. But nope, nada, nothing out of the ordinary, just boring local history stuff. It made me feel even more isolated, more paranoid. I was losing control. The line between what was real and what wasn't, it was blurring. I was fighting it, still clinging to logic, but there was a crack in my foundation, a big, gaping crack. I'd be walking through the house, and I'd swear I felt eyes on me. Not just the fleeting shadow anymore, but a heavy, cold presence. Like someone was constantly behind me, just out of sight, always watching. My heart would pound so hard it felt like it was going to burst. I'd whip around, but there was never anything, just empty space. I started turning on every light in the house, even in rooms I wasn't in. But it didn't help. The fear was still there, a chill that seeped into my bones, no matter how much light I tried to throw at it. "What the hell is going on?" I'd whisper into the brightly lit, yet still dark, corners of my home. One afternoon, I was out in the front garden, just trying to clear my head, trimming some of the overgrown rose bushes. The sun was actually out, a welcome change from the gloomy feeling inside. Mrs. Henderson, our old neighbor, was walking by, taking her usual stroll. She's this sweet older lady with wispy white hair, and she's lived on this street forever. She knows absolutely everything about this place, everyone who's ever lived here. She stopped, all smiles, to chat, asking how she was settling in. Said she was making some fresh coffee, invited me over. I figured, why not? A distraction, maybe. So I went over. We sat on her porch, the air smelling of her roses and freshly brewed coffee.
We were just talking, catching up, reminiscing about my childhood here. I found myself rambling, trying to sound cheerful, totally normal. I even, somewhat stupidly, brought up my personal peripheral ghost. I laughed, that dismissive laugh I always used, about how I used to blame it on my mild astigmatism and tired eyes. Just a quirk of my biology, I said, trying to make it sound like some funny little anecdote. Mrs. Henderson just smiled, a soft, gentle smile. But then, her eyes, they got this distant, almost sad look, like she was looking at something far away, something old and worn out. "Oh, that shadow," she said, her voice soft. Just 2 simple words. "Your mother used to tell me about it, how both you and Alex, you both used to talk about it." She took a slow sip of her coffee, her gaze still far away. "And it always disappeared, didn't it, whenever your dad walked into the room?" My world spun. It didn't just spin, it shattered. My head felt like it had been hit by a truck. Alex saw it too? Not just me, not just my eyes playing tricks. And he pointed at it, even before he could speak, and it reacted to my dad? Disappeared? Every single logical explanation I'd painstakingly built up, brick by brick, over years, it all crumbled into dust. Dust, just like that old house. I looked around the sun-drenched porch, at the harmless shadows cast by her rose bushes, dancing innocently. For the first time, they didn't look like mere shadows anymore. I remembered Alex's tiny finger, those baby babbles, pointing at something I'd always dismissed as nothing. My dad's stern face, always brushing off our imagination. I'd rationalized my own experiences, convinced myself they were just a glitch in my vision. But Alex? And why did it always vanish when my dad was around? A fear, cold and sharp, sank deep into my bones. If it wasn't my eyes, if it wasn't just me, then what the hell was it? What had been hiding there all those years? A shared secret between 2 brothers, invisible to adults? And now I was back in this house. What did it want? I stared at a dark patch flickering under the rose bushes right beside her porch. A quick, unsettling movement. Not my eyes, not an illusion, a cold, heavy presence. And it was looking right back at me. Oh man, that coffee in my hand, it was ice cold. Didn't even register until Mrs. Henderson's words just kept spinning, drilling into my skull like a broken record. Both you and Alex used to talk about it. Alex, he'd point at it, and it always disappeared, didn't it, whenever your dad walked into the room? My head felt like it had been hit by a wrecking ball. The mug slipped right out of my fingers. Didn't even make a sound when it hit the old wooden porch, just split right open, coffee splattering across the boards. Didn't care. What the hell is she saying? My whole world, that neat, tidy, logical world I'd spent decades building, brick by painful brick, it just came crashing down. All those scientific explanations, all the times I'd convinced myself it was just my eyes, just my brain playing tricks, it was gone, like someone had yanked the goddamn rug out from under my feet, leaving me flat on my ass, staring up at a sky I didn't recognize. I was trying to pick up the pieces, to put them back together. Alex saw it too. Not just saw it, but interacted with it, pointed at it, and it reacted to my dad. That mild astigmatism, the eye strain, the phosphenes, those were just jokes now. A cruel, sick joke I'd played on myself for years. A real, bone-deep fear, cold as ice, started to seep into my muscles, into my very bones. This wasn't eye strain. This wasn't some minor vision problem. This was real. It was all real. "Oh, that shadow," Mrs. Henderson had said, her voice so calm, so soft. She'd smiled, a gentle, kind smile, but her eyes, they held this ancient, knowing sadness. Like she'd seen too much, understood too much. Your mother used to tell me about it, How both you and Alex, you both used to talk about it. How you two would chase it, or how Alex, even before he could talk properly, he'd point at it. She looked at me then, her gaze unwavering, almost pitying. It always disappeared, didn't it, whenever your dad walked into the room? What the hell are you talking about? The words barely scraped out of my throat, raw and choked. My own voice sounded alien. Alex, too? He saw it, and it went away when Dad came in? My eyes were probably bugging out of my head, I swear. I must have looked like a maniac, all wide-eyed and pale. She just kept that gentle smile, like she was talking about the weather or some old neighborhood gossip. But for me, it was the end of everything. The end of my sanity, maybe. Flashbacks hit me like a physical punch. Not fleeting memories anymore, but vivid, brutal replays. Alex's tiny, pudgy finger pointing into a shadowed corner of our old nursery. His baby babbles, a nonsensical stream of sounds. But now, in my head, I could almost hear him saying, "Bong, bong. Shadow, shadow." I remembered how I'd always brushed it off, copying Dad. "It's nothing, Alex, just the light." And Dad, his face always so stern, so dismissive. "It's your imagination, boys, nothing there." He'd always say it, his voice low, firm, almost like a command. He never raised his voice, but his words had weight. Now, that weight felt like a stone crushing my chest. If it was real, if Alex saw it too.
Then why the hell did Dad always do that? Why did he always make it disappear? Was he protecting us? Or was he something else? Was he part of it? The thought made my stomach lurch, hot and sour. My dad, the man who'd taught me to fix anything, to be logical, to trust what I saw with my own 2 eyes. What if he'd been lying to me all those years? My hands started to tremble, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. I clenched them, dug my nails into my palms, trying to make it stop, but it just kept going, a tremor that ran all the way up my arms, shaking my shoulders. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, trickling down my temples. My heart was a drum solo in my chest, a frantic, desperate rhythm. I looked around Mrs. Henderson's porch again. The sun was still bright, dappling through the leaves, casting those harmless shadows on the old wooden floor. But they weren't harmless anymore, not to me. They wriggled, they pulsed, they seemed to shift just at the very edge of my vision. Every single patch of darkness, every gap between the rose bushes, every corner seemed to hold something, something alive, something watching, waiting. If it wasn't my eyes, if it wasn't just me, then what the fuck was it? What the hell had been lurking there all those years? A shared nightmare, a secret between 2 brothers, invisible to the adults who should have protected us. And now I was back in this house, my house. What did it want? What had it been waiting for? A fear, colder and sharper than anything I'd ever felt, pierced through me, settling deep in my bones. It felt like needles, thousands of them, pricking at my very soul. I looked at the dark patch under the rose bushes right by the porch steps. A quick, unsettling movement, like a ripple in black water. This time, I swear to God, it wasn't my eyes. It wasn't an illusion. It was a presence, cold, heavy. It hung there, in the air, thick and menacing. And it was looking right back at me. "Fuck," I whispered, my voice cracked and dry. I knew it. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. And I wasn't that logical, practical guy anymore. Not after this. I had seen, and I knew.